machine.
I think they're too
of his.
political. I don't think he has the background or the knowledge to know how to make government significantly more efficient. I don't think he has. The state budget has increased significantly since he's been there. The number of employees is slightly less through attrition, but he never really did, in my opinion, a top to bottom redesign, overhaul of state government. We did that at the city and we did it at the county, and it saved tens of millions of dollars. I mean, if I were to go through with you everything that we did at the county, we wouldn't have time, but I can just tell you, it ended up putting us in a very good financial position. We were able to avoid raising taxes. We eliminated a lot of patronage. We operated, I don't want to say we operated it just as a business because I don't believe government can be run as a business, but I think there are principles of business that can and should be applied. And the most basic of them is to not act as if you're a monopoly. The reason that government, I think, is so frequently inefficient is because it doesn't have the profit motive that is always spurring it on to more efficiencies or to cut costs, because it's a monopoly. So what we've tried to inculcate in the county is that we don't behave as if we're a monopoly, even though we are. Because we compare ourselves to other counties in the way they provide their services across the state and across the country. That may sound like it's a simple principle, but I can promise you, having been involved in local government now for almost 20 years, government typically does not work that way. When Governor Kasich says we spend too much on local government, he has a point. But in order to spend less on local government, you need to incentivize efficiency in local government. What Governor Kasich did was cut the local government fund by 50% and say this is going to force them to be more efficient. That's not the way it works. It's much more involved than that. If you want to make local government more efficient, provide avenues for them to do it. Or say, if you want to draw down on this much state money, you need to do things like sharing your health care with other communities and reducing administrative costs, like they did for the school system. The school systems don't share health care information and costs because they all just happen to be foresightful about that. It was because state lawmakers started requiring it. They haven't done those kind of things because they used it as an excuse to balance the state budget. How do we know that this is true? There has been no wave of consolidation of government in Ohio in the last 4 years. Far from it. I haven't heard really of virtually any cities. I think maybe there's one or two in the entire state that ended up merging. So all you did was you had cities and counties and townships, by the way, who just had less money. And a lot of them ended up just raising taxes. Now, some of them made serious cuts to services. And some of them raised taxes, which is one reason why the number of levies has gone up. There's two things that I think. I wish this was in some ways a race that wasn't partisan at all, and I know you have a fairly conservative constituency out here, but I want to tell you that this is something. These are issues that I'm not just talking about that because I'm in a more conservative part of the state. This is what I ran on as a mayor, as a county executive, and I'm trying to run on it at the state level because I'm very proud of my record when it comes to this. But there are two things that have happened that I think anybody that is conservative, and not in the partisan sense of being conservative, but just has conservative fiscal values. Number one is you've had a shift away from local control to state control, which I find to be disturbing because I think government is best when it's closest to the people, and I think local government is more accountable than state government. Just like I think the federal government is less accountable than the state government. The farther you get, the bigger you get, the more obscure the bureaucracy becomes, the less real oversight there is. Okay. So I don't like the model of saying the state budget gets bigger and local governments get smaller. That's number one. Number two is I think that this whole trend where taxation is pushed down is going to make a lot of communities just not as viable. Now he characterizes that, by the way, as some kind of subsidy of local government. That's not a handout. It's not welfare to local communities. That was a deal that was made by both Republican and Democratic governors for decades, going back to the 30s, that the state wasn't going to collect taxes without sharing them with local communities. It was an explicit part of the deal when the state sales tax was instituted, and it was an explicit part of the deal when the state income tax was implemented, and every single governor has respected it until this one.